Well, as the United States gets close to the 4th of July holiday, a number of different shortages are threatening the holiday, I guess, if you want to think about it in the most standard way. But this is a good opportunity to talk about a number of the different areas in which there are shortages. I think it's important for context. Why are we talking about this? We're talking about this because, number one, I have no interest in hiding shortages just because Joe Biden is president. That's a common one that I'm accused of. And secondly, none of these things have anything to do with Joe Biden, particularly when you consider the global nature of many of these shortages. A few things to be aware of. There is a sriracha shortage. This is, I guess I'm not wrong in calling it an Asian chili sauce. I think that's the way it's most typically described. And there is a lot of breathless coverage of the looming sriracha shortage. I love sriracha, but for me, first of all, by the way, if you really, it's just the primary sriracha that there's a shortage of. So there are all sorts of other sriracha brands as well. You can also look at other hot sauces, but indeed there is the expectation that the country's most popular brand of sriracha will be in a shortage coming soon. Yufeng Foods, the California-based producer of this sauce, says they will have to scale back production due to an abysmal spring crop of Mexican red jalapenos. Nothing to do with Joe Biden. It is not Joe Biden's fault that in Mexico they've had a bad crop of red jalapenos. Okay, with 4th of July coming up, mustard, a global mustard shortage is looming ahead of summer barbecues, as reported by Axios. A few of the largest mustard brands like Kraft Heinz say they don't expect shortages, but there are some mustards which will be experiencing stock issues. I love a good mustard. I'm partial to grain mustard and brown deli mustard. I'm just not big on the yellow stuff. It sort of seems a little bit cartoonish to me. And I know baseball fans won't react kindly to that. No, but in all seriousness, I love mustard. There will be mustards available, maybe just not the one that you like. More seriously, there is a medical contrast dye shortage, and medical contrast dyes are used for a number of different imaging procedures and surgical procedures. I talked recently of my girlfriend's perforation that she had, and one of the ways that they confirm the perforation has been fixed is they use one of these contrast dyes under imaging and then see if any of the dye escapes where it's supposed to be. These are very important medical materials. It's used in diagnosing and treating stroke, aneurysm, cardiac conditions. These are essential to hospitals in many ways. There is a delay happening there. The global chip shortage will continue. This predates Joe Biden and has nothing to do with Joe Biden. And industry experts don't believe there will be relief on the chip shortage until 2023. There is a nurse shortage. Anecdotally, Shreveport, Louisiana, warning of a nurse shortage, but this is happening nationally in many different places. When we've recently been in the hospital for the birth and for everything else that's been going on, many traveling nurses who just like, they'll literally come up from like Baltimore to New York City for a week and just work a week in a hospital unfamiliar to them, then go back down to Baltimore. A lot of that going on to try to deal with the shortage in some areas. That is expected to continue. And then lastly, for me, there's other shortages as well. But lastly, for what I'll talk about today, a pilot shortage could lead to flight delays and cancellations. And we have already seen that. So this is a major, large issue, which we will continue to follow. Hopefully everybody's 4th of July will be okay. Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger is lashing out at Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. Remember that Lauren Boebert recently said, "I'm sick and tired of this separation of church and state." It's kind of the Constitution, Lauren, but you're tired of it. Adam Kinzinger calling it the Christian Taliban. As a reminder, here is the clip from a couple of days ago. Lauren Boebert going full theocracy, saying, "Church and state, I'm sick of it."
The reason we had so many overreaching regulations in our nation is because the church complied.
Right.
The church is supposed to direct the government.
What?
The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk that's not in the Constitution. It was in a stinking letter, and it means nothing like what they say it does.
Whoa. Well, it turns out that that is crazy. And fellow Republican launching a civil war salvo from within the Republican Party, Adam Kinzinger says, quote, there is no difference between this meaning, this video of Lauren Boebert that we just watched. There's no difference between this and the Taliban. We must oppose the Christian Taliban. I say this as a Christian. Has a Republican politician straight up said Christian Taliban before? Because they love to talk about Sharia law. And, it's bad and it's coming. And hold on a second. The Christian version of Sharia law, is what has actually been plaguing this country for a very long time. I disagree with Adam Kinzinger politically, but I have some respect for him. Now, I know it's easier to put country over party the way that he's doing when you're leaving. I understand that. I'm not naive. I get it. He's in a position where he doesn't care because he's leaving. But it is amazing how the bar has been lowered. Democrats today would be thrilled to some degree to deal with the Republicans from 15 years ago. Not that those were good people. We shouldn't see them as good people. But 15 years ago, the Republicans were much more reasonable to deal with. That being said, the Republicans of 15 years ago are responsible for the Republican Party today being what it is. And what I mean by that is they didn't condemn the start of the rhetoric that led to Trumpism today. They didn't condemn the extremism. They didn't say, well, we've got to stop this here or here or here. They allowed it to keep going. So while I would much rather be dealing with the Republicans of 15 years ago than people like Lauren Boebert, that's for sure, we also have to understand the historical context, which I talked about with many people, including Noam Chomsky on the show before, that they are also responsible for what we are seeing today. But to the extent that Adam Kinzinger is willing to call it out, to the extent that Adam Kinzinger is maybe going to change some Republicans' mind and get some Republican to go, hey, you know what? The Boebert version of Republicanism is crazy. It's not even constitutional. Tired of separation of church and state. It's like being tired of the First Amendment, Lauren, which I thought you cared about. To the extent that he might have an impact on anybody, I gladly welcome Adam Kinzinger's comments. If you want an example of how low the anti-choice right is willing to go, the Mississippi Republican Speaker of the House says that even if a 12-year-old is raped by her dad and is pregnant as a result, she must be forced to carry the baby to term. It's unconscionable. It's unconscionable. We have an article. It's pretty vile. 12-year-old incest victims should birth dad's child, House Speaker Gunn says. This article's by our friend Ashton Pittman, who's been a guest on the show. Mississippi House Speaker Philip Gunn says abortion should be illegal, even for a 12-year-old rape victim carrying her father or uncle's child. He made the remarks to reporters in the House after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade and Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. I have video. I know that this is really, really, really tough to watch. Take a listen.
I believe life begins at conception, and every life is valuable, and those are my personal beliefs.
So that 12-year-old child was molested by her father or uncle, should carry that child on her.
That is my personal belief. I believe life begins at conception.
Now, life begins at conception is sort of a cop-out. I don't know anyone who would deny that there is a form of life at conception. The relevant question is, when are we talking about a person And in just about no other way are people like this guy willing to provide the other personhood benefits to, a 2-day-old clump of cells that he would call life. They don't want to provide child support. They don't think it's the basis for citizenship. We've gone through it before. But that position, a 12-year-old should be forced to carry the incestuous pregnancy to term. And it's sick to even say it. It's not pro-child and it's not pro-woman. And then I realized, wait a second, there is no woman. It's another child, another 12-year-old child. But we're supposed to believe that this is pro-life and that he has the interests of the child in mind. Our friend Ashton Pittman has been reporting on this. And he writes, quote, in Mississippi, poor mothers only have access to postpartum Medicaid coverage for 2 months after giving birth. This year, the Republican-led Mississippi Senate voted overwhelmingly to vote to extend that to 2 months. Speaker Gunn killed the bill. Also adding later in a Twitter thread, quote, Mississippi boasts the nation's highest infant mortality rate, highest fetal mortality rate, lowest overall life expectancy rate, and highest COVID-19 death rate. Mississippi's maternal mortality rate is 1.9 times higher than the nation as a whole. Mississippi is a mess. It's not an insult to the people. It's just the facts, folks. Healthcare in Mississippi is a disaster. Education in Mississippi is a disaster. The economy of Mississippi it's a disaster. And I feel bad about it for the people who live there. And what they want to do is force 12-year-olds impregnated by their fathers to carry the pregnancy to term. What they want should be criminal. Truly horrible people. Let me know your thoughts. Is this even a shock to you? Find me on Twitter at @DPakman. The David Pakman Show is an audience-supported program. We have a membership program. It is completely cool and completely legal.
Oh, the bonus show where you want to make money, but everybody else that makes money to fund themselves is bad.
Yeah. And you can sign up at joinpakman.com. You can use the coupon code BIGVOTING22 to get a discount. Let's start calls via Discord. We take phone calls at davidpakman.com/Discord. They're not really phones, but, we still call them phone calls. Let's start today with our friendly neighbors to the north, going to Yoel from Ontario. Is this Ontario, Canada, Yoel? Oh, boy. Yoel, if you unmute, I'll be able to hear you. Yoel from Ontario, last chance. An inauspicious start today. That is disappointing. Let's go to Mark from Los Angeles. Mark, I'm confident you'll save us.
Hello?
Hello.
David?
You're on the
Can you
air.
hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Fantastic. Love your show. First of all, I just wanted, people have already said this, but have you seen more signs that that the abortion issue is actually might shift the needle in terms of the midterms?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Because the funny thing is, I work with a lot of folks who blue collar, a lot of conservatives, and one of the things that they don't seem to realize is I actually know a woman who is a born again Christian. She's a relative of mine who is fervently pro-abortion. She actually had one, and she's unapologetic. It's kind of shocking when you talk to her. So you don't realize how many people are actually in favor of their rights,
Yes.
to be able to do what they want to do with their bodies. That's one thing I just wanted to say is, I think this might be a big touchstone, a shock wave that might overtake the next election, because it's just something. It's one thing when it's ambiguous, but when they take something away from you,
Yes.
you realize you wake up. And that's,
So
that's a
two
good
things
thing.
on that. Number one, more of the country is in favor of abortion being legal in most cases than at any time during the Roe v. Wade era. So, and that's exactly why, as Mark points out, there's even born again Christians or whatever who are in favor of individuals having that right. And secondly, every generic ballot poll that I have seen this week shows Democrats now leading where 3 months ago Democrats were losing. So I do think, Mark, that Democrats have a shot thanks to what's going on with Roe v. Wade and thanks to what's going on with the lack of gun safety regulation.
Well, that's fantastic. Oh, and also I wanted to say congratulations. The funny thing is I dip out. I actually take your advice. I dip out of politics sometimes because it becomes so toxic that I just can't take it anymore. And I stop listening to you. I'm a subscriber, by the way.
Thank you.
But I just stopped listening. I take a break for like a week or something. And I came back and all of a sudden you had a baby. You were gone.
Listen, I was shocked. I all of a sudden came back and I had a baby. If you think you were shocked to hear it, I was shocked to be doing it. You know, Mark?
Wait, is this one of those like she didn't know she was pregnant moments?
No,
like
no,
on
no.
TV?
It is not. It is nothing like that. It's just still that shocking.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I remember watching a gynecologist say that one of the most amazing things about her job that she never gets over is the fact that she walks in the room and then by the time they're finished, there's an extra person in the world.
Yeah, well, try going to the hospital with 2 people and coming out with 3. It's quite a shocker.
Well, I want to congratulate you, Dave. Oh, and one last thing I want to say is, I work as a stagehand.
Okay.
And one of the things that I never could get is, remember the whole voting rights bills that, that failed?
Yes.
I worked on the Super Bowl, and like the person who sung the Star Spangled Banner is black. I'm African American. Is black. The person who sung the national anthem is black. The overwhelming majority of the football members are black, and I'm just like standing here like working. And I'm just like, why can't we? We need to just do a protest. Do what's that famous Greek play where all the women wouldn't have sex with the men until they stopped the war? We need to just protest or something, or get active in order to try to force these people, because that is a $5 billion event.
Wow.
And if black folks said, you know what? Well, yes, I was shocked too. It was a $5 billion at SoFi Stadium. That thing, in terms of all the money that's made off of the Super Bowl, it's $5 billion.
I got you, Mark. It's quite a number. Listen, Mark, you've said it all. Yeah. I'm going to let you go. I look forward to hearing from you again. Okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Have a great Mark, one. Love your shot show. Out of a cannon today, on fire, completely on fire. Okay, let's go next to John from Kentucky. Welcome, John.
Hi there.
Oh boy. Dear God. John, you're coming through all modulated like you're a robot. You're not a robot, are you?
I am not. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. You sounded like C3PO or 3CPO or whatever it is.
As a Star Wars fan, I can say you were right the first time.
Okay.
Or a previous Star Wars fan. But that's not what I'm calling about.
Okay.
So I was keeping track of the Supreme Court stuff over the last couple of weeks, just like everybody else has. And of course, the Dobbs decision was heartbreaking.
Yes.
To see what happened to, actively creating half of our population as second-class citizens. That's, something that we all have to contend with over the next. But what the decision that really, really caught my attention over the last couple of days was the Kennedy decision. And while I used to be a Christian, and I can understand why Christians initially believe that, it's innocuous, it's a football coach. He believes his creator is going to protect him, and so he should pray over people. I can understand the Christian perspective.
Yep.
But what is important to me was not necessarily the decision itself, but the fact that of the case in his decision. By saying that the coach was just quietly praying to himself in midfield at any time that any other person, he wasn't acting as a representative.
Right.
But then Justice Sotomayor posted a picture of him praying with the entire team,
yes.
Very clearly acting as a representative and the football coach at that time.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I have a conservative aunt who argues as this facts versus alternative facts stuff. It's just a little bit scary seeing that type of argumentation coming from the Supreme Court now.
Without a doubt. You're absolutely right. It was not a quiet prayer. It was a huge thing. The coach with multiple circles of players around him and then media around them. It's implicitly coercive because of the power dynamics. And John, you're completely right in your assessment.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just like Mark, I just want to say congratulations on the baby, man. And yeah, you have a wonderful rest of the day.
All right, there we go. There's John from Kentucky. Let's go next to John from Sacramento. John, welcome. John from Sacramento, you're on the air. And last chance for John from Sacramento. You're not muted, so I'm guessing you have the wrong microphone selected in Discord. One last shot at fixing that. All right, John from Sacramento, not working. Let's go to Chris from Philly. Chris, I know you're going to save us with a properly configured microphone, right, my friend?
Hopefully.
All right, that's not bad.
So I've been waiting to do this for a long time. Chris from Philly, black.
Chris, are you saying you're identifying yourself as a black man? Is that what you're saying?
Oh yes, sir. Without
Okay.
a doubt. So
Well, thank you.
one thing I keep on one thing I have a pet peeve with Republicans right now.
Yeah.
Is with the whole Roe v. Wade thing, and no one's really sitting there saying nothing about Sharia law anymore.
Oh, right. In other words, let me see if I understand your point. You're saying they used to talk about, oh, they want to take over American law with Sharia law. But now that they're they're succeeding to some degree at taking over American civil law with Christianity, now they don't care about that anymore.
Factual.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Adam Kinzinger, I talked about this on the show. Adam Kinzinger is calling, I don't know if you saw, Lauren Boebert recently said she's tired of separation of church and state. And Adam Kinzinger, who's a Republican, called it Christian Taliban, which is exactly what it is.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like, I guess you can say she's saved again after, she got exposed.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, it's great. These people are hypocrites and they're dangerous. But the really scary thing, Chris, is if they do well in November, all bets are off as to how far they can go with this. They could really do some serious damage to the country.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Anything else?
For answering. No, that was it.
All right. Chris from Philly, thanks for the call.
No problem.
All right. Chris from Philly, concise. What a beautiful phone call. Love it. Let's go to Mike from southeastern Pennsylvania. Mike, welcome. Mike from southeastern Pennsylvania, you're on the air. And last chance for Mike from southeastern Pennsylvania. By the way, I know people start to think the tech problems are on my end. They're not. I can see what's going on. Like, this is a user who has, this is a user who's gone, actually. Okay. That's why I can't hear them. They just hung up. Let's go next to Dave from Windsor. Dave from Windsor, welcome.
Oh, hi, Mr. Pakman.
Welcome.
Hi. Didn't really have a question. I sometimes like to listen to this stuff when I'm doing work. Congrats on the kid.
All right, Dave from Windsor, thank you. I will put you back in the queue so you can listen. What boy, what a phone. Must be a full moon, right? Not that I believe in that type of thing. Let's go to Trenton from Detroit. Trenton, welcome. Give us a question, sir.
Oh, hey, David. So my question is, I guess, considering everything that's been going on with the January 6th committee, obviously damning testimony, and
yeah,
even yesterday, which is the testimony is probably some of the most damning since Watergate. Do you think realistically it's going to actually change anybody's mind about maybe a 2022 primaries or the 2024 presidential election? Because unfortunately, I don't think it will.
I think it'll change some nominal number of minds. I don't think it'll be a game changer. However, if it leads to charges, which I don't think it will, but if it led to serious criminal charges against people, I think it might. But just if it's just they do the committee and then it's over and then we have the November election and then that's it, I think it will not do anything significant. No, I think you're right.
You know, from my end, I have a lot of people that are kind of in that Trump MAGA land who I guess I work with. And with a lot of the other stuff, they talk about it and deny it. But with this, it seems like they're not even tuned in. So I'm not sure if that's a good sign for sanity or not. But
it's not a particularly good sign. I mean, this is always a thing. The people who most should be watching these hearings are just not watching the hearings. It's a sad reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But
Thanks,
listen,
dude.
we've got to vote. At least you'll vote, right?
Oh, of course.
Absolutely.
Every time.
Everyone must vote. All right, Trenton, thank you for the call. All right, Trenton, very, very good. Let's go next to Blake from Seattle. Blake, welcome. Blake from Seattle, you are on the air.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, hey, I was just wondering, I kind of wanted to run something by you. When it comes to taxing the rich,
Okay.
I wanted to know if it would be a good idea to tax like the rich on the loans that they get. Sorry, I'm kind of nervous.
No, you're doing fine. So let me see if I understand the question. You're saying like, let me explain it and we'll see if I'm on the right track here, Blake. Okay.
Okay.
So a mechanism that sometimes the wealthy use is they have all of these stocks and bonds. If they sell the stocks and bonds and there's been appreciation, they owe capital gains. So what you can do is get like a pledged asset loan or otherwise take a loan against those stocks and bonds. So you say, hey, I've got 10 million in stock. Give me a $5 million loan. I'll give you the stock as collateral. The 5 million loan doesn't count as income. And then you just spend the 5 million and you're sort of avoiding the taxes, at least while you're alive. That's kind of what you're suggesting, right?
Yeah, so I'm saying like maybe there's like a threshold so like a normal person can get like a normal loan without
Yeah.
being taxed for it.
Right.
But like the super rich would have to pay taxes on it, and then I don't care if like in the end they want to, write it off on their taxes as like the 5 million that they borrowed, even if the stock appreciates and they have to pay the rest of the capital gains when they sell it. But I feel like that would prevent more of the super rich people from like avoiding taxes.
Yep. I mean, listen, you're thinking along the same lines that we recently did an interview with an inequality economist who said a similar idea is let's tax the rich when their money is just sitting in order to, kind of influence them to put the money into the economy in some kind of more stimulative way. I think these are all totally reasonable ideas. And Blake, I think it's great that you're thinking about it. The changes that would be it's just like, I never say never, but the degree of changes to the way the tax code works in order to do that, that's far more complicated than like changing the top tax rate or the capital gains rate. So I don't want to say it'll never happen, but it'll probably never happen because that's just not the way loan proceeds work.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I feel like that would solve a lot of the problems, and it would prevent that whole wealth tax thing from people who feel like that's unfair.
Yep, absolutely. No, you're thinking along the right lines. There's economic realities and there's political realities.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, David. I appreciate it.
All right, Blake from Seattle, very good call. We're going to take a very short break. If you're hanging on to talk to me, just keep holding because I'm going right back to the phones in a moment. Okay, let's hear from more of the most important people, the audience. Without the audience, I'm a guy in a room with a microphone, and it's really, really sad. Let's go next to Dave from Brooklyn. Dave, welcome. Dave from Brooklyn, you're on the air. You are muted. You've got to unmute yourself in order to talk to me. And last call for Dave from Brooklyn, who has muted himself, and Dave has quit. All right, let's go to an old friend, Issa from London. Issa, welcome.
Hey, David. Following on from what I think it was John, he was talking about the Kennedy praying case.
Yes.
So I'm an NFL fan myself. Unfortunately, I'm a Cardinals fan, so the seasons are spent in misery for the most part.
Fair.
But I was thinking it's a bit strange how it's the only sports league in the whole world, and I guess the only sport in the whole world where religion, specifically Christianity, seems to be, I guess, ingrained in the culture.
Mm.
What do you think about that? Because
you're saying Christianity is ingrained in the NFL? How is that?
Maybe not in the NFL, but even in college football and even in the high school level of the sport. Like I've heard about a majority of the players being Christian, and I've heard instances of daily practice and training sessions where guys have prayer circles, and it goes back to that thing where you're expected to bow your head and sort of just join in out of respect.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then that affects your social standing within the squad and with the coach.
Agree totally. I mean, a lot of the top high school programs and college programs are in some of the most religious parts of the country, and that I absolutely agree with.
Yeah, like Alabama and Clemson, for example.
Yep.
But then, like, guys like Tim Tebow, who obviously flopped, but then he went on Fox and he was talking about his religious beliefs. I heard stories about guys like him, for example, when he was at the combine before he joined the league. There was some instance where he said to everyone, "Hey guys, let's have a prayer circle," and apparently he was laughed at. But I think it's just a bit strange how much religion seems to be ingrained in the culture on and off the field.
I agree with you. I mean, it doesn't resonate with me, but it's it is what it is. I think it is true that it is less present in other major sports. I mean, you don't hear about the big Christian presence in like soccer, for example. Soccer is much smaller in the United States also, but I agree with you completely. To me, it's all a bit weird.
Yeah, same. I agree.
It's also just like at the end of the day, is it if both teams pray and one team wins, did God choose that team? Was it because they practiced more or because they prayed more? I mean, it's always all a little bit strange to me for that reason as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Things are otherwise good in London?
Not really, no, but
Oh, what's going on?
Well, I mean, if we were, by the time the show airs, like the latest affairs will probably be out of date. There's like something new each week. What's the most recent thing? Probably the UK Tories looking to repeal a European-based Human Rights Act because they wanted to deport asylum-seeking immigrants to Rwanda.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard about that.
No, I did not. I have not been following that.
Yeah, so there was a plane ready to deport them. And then right at the last second, the European-based Human Rights Council blocked it. So now they wanna repeal these human rights laws so that they can proceed with basically deporting immigrants.
Wow. So not that different than what Republicans want to do here, it sounds like.
Not really, no.
Yeah. Hey, Issa, before I let you go, can you name 3 countries that start with the letter G?
G?
Yeah.
Okay. Gabon, Gambia, Germany.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you, my friend. Good to talk to you.
See you.
All right. Take care. There's Issa from London giving us a little trivia as well. Let's see who else we have holding on today. Oh, let's go to Taylor from Indiana. Taylor, you've called in before, right?
I don't believe that I have.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, welcome anyway.
Thank you.
What's on your mind?
I wanted to read a quote from John Adams and then discuss it.
Okay. I'm a little hesitant. Do you have a question?
I do.
Okay.
I do, and it
All right.
relates to the quote.
Okay.
He said this pertaining to the forming of the country, the American Revolution, and the Constitution.
Okay.
He said, quote, "It will never be pretended that any persons employed in that service had interviews with the gods or were in any degree under the inspiration of heaven more than those that work upon ships or houses or laboring in merchandise or agriculture.
Okay.
It will forever be acknowledged that these governments were contrived merely by the use of reason and the senses." End quote. I guess my question is, how did we get to this point that it seems like somebody cannot be even elected to office without invoking some type of religion?
I know.
And what do we do about it if there's anything we can?
What we do about it is we need a less Christian nationalist Supreme Court so that the decisions increasingly separate church and state rather than blend them together. But the big picture, I mean, the point you're getting to is you have all these right-wing Christian dominionist nationalist types who want to ignore everything the founding fathers said and instead go, hey, they were personally religious, therefore they probably didn't want separation of church and state, ignoring everything they said, which is absolutely nuts.
Right. And it's for the most part a myth that that the majority of the founders were very religious.
Yeah. Tell me what you know about that. I know that many of them were religious, but not all.
Well, so one example I know of, Thomas Jefferson is famous for editing the Bible with a razor blade, cutting out all the supernatural parts. I'm not here to like promote a book necessarily, but there's a good book by Andrew Seidel, constitutional attorney.
Yep, we've interviewed him.
That I've been listening to that book, and there's all kinds of good information in there. The book's called The Founding Myth: Why Christian Nationalism is Un-American.
Indeed.
And there's so many lies from like all of the supposed super Christian things that George Washington did, like praying in the snow at Valley Forge and things like that. It's all just completely made up.
Well, I don't know enough about that to say for sure. I'll research it, but your main point is absolutely well taken, and I appreciate you making it.
Thank you very much.
All right. Taylor, very nice phone call. Appreciate it. Let's talk to some other people. I mean, listen, why not, right? We're doing it. Let's go to Emmanuel from New York. Emmanuel, welcome back. I know I've spoken to you, right?
Yeah, you have. Actually.
All right. Beautiful.
I have a question for you. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think political violence will be kind of necessary? Because like, if you look at history, people have used political violence. Like, do you know about the country Rhodesia? You heard about it, right?
I know. I'm familiar with Rhodesia. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, like, they were treated the majority black population like crap, and so they fought back, and they won the war because Zimbabwe is now a thing. So, like, do you think that we can apply that to like what's happening in the Supreme Court with the voting issue, abortion, and the policing in America?
Maybe this is me being naively optimistic, but I also, from a practical standpoint, don't think that violence is going to be the solution here, because violence is not going to, let me see how I can put this. The United States right now, it's almost like a logistical problem, violence to achieve goals in the United States. The U.S. is mostly left-leaning cities within kind of like purple metro areas inside of right-leaning rural areas across a vast expanse of land. And I just don't know from a practical standpoint how even just saying like, if we're okay morally with using violence to achieve change, I don't know how in a country like the US, that's how you do it. It just seems like chaos and death and injury and insanity without actually really achieving political change to say we're just going to use violence. I'm also morally opposed to it, but that's a different question.
Yeah, like in Zimbabwe, they did achieve the goals because you know what happened to it.
I'm not that familiar with Zimbabwean history.
Oh, okay. So one more question. Do you think the what happened in Supreme with abortion will change the effect of the Latino vote? Because like my parents vote for Democrat, but like if you look at them, they're very conservative actually. Like, because I saw this Telemundo Televisión, that Spanish channel?
Yeah.
And basically, one woman said, this is what she said, I'm Democrat, I don't like abortion. So, like, what is that? I like in my mind, like, wait, so can this actually change, like, the Latino vote?
So, it is true. So, the Latino vote in the U.S. is interesting. The Latino vote is generally left-wing, other than Cubans and some Venezuelans. But the Latino vote is also very Catholic. And so there is more anti-abortion sentiment among the Latino vote than some might believe. I think if there is any impact from the Roe v. Wade decision on 2022, I think it helps Democrats. I don't know how to slice it and dice it within the Latino vote, but I think the polling is already telling us that if anybody's going to benefit from the Roe v. Wade decision, it's going to be Democrats in the fall. We'll see.
So, but do you think do you think they'll have a little effect or no?
I think that in general or on the Latino vote?
Like in general.
Yes, I think that the Roe v. Wade decision will have an effect and it will help Democrats in the fall.
All right. Thank you for the question and good luck with the baby.
All right. Thank you. Very much appreciate the call. That does it for today, folks. I know I didn't get to everyone. I never do. I'm sorry. But we got to a bunch of people and we will speak to more people next week. We'll take a quick break and be right back. All right, it is time for the Friday mailbag. And what a mailbag it is. If you have something to say, you can email info@davidpakman.com. Respectful messages are always preferred, but they can be about absolutely anything that's on your mind. So let's start today with Vincent. Vincent is, as usual, not happy with me, and he's not happy with Jews. And okay, so Vincent says, why would any Jew or black be in favor of gun control? If I were a member of a group that was put in danger of extermination, as the Jews were by 30s and 40s Germany, I would never give up my arms. Similarly, the very first Jim Crow laws passed after Reconstruction were laws prohibiting the ownership of firearms by blacks. If someone ever enslaved me, I would never turn over my guns. An armed person is a citizen. An unarmed person is a potential slave. So this is this particular email is not overtly anti-Semitic. This Vincent guy, every email is about Jews one way or the other. He can't send an email without mentioning Jews. But to the point here, first of all, there's two sides to this. Number one, the whole concept of if the Jews had guns in Germany, there would have been no Holocaust. It has been studied extensively by historians, and it has been widely debunked. It is not true that if Jews had handguns in Germany, or even rifles in Germany right before the Holocaust, that it would have prevented it. And similarly, in the United States, when folks think handguns and AR-15s are going to prevent government tyranny if it really came to it with the tanks and the Black Hawk helicopters and the shoulder-mounted RPGs, it's not. So either the argument doesn't make sense, or you're saying citizens should be able to own those arms, or, you know, I've actually talked to Ben Shapiro about this, and you can find that conversation on our YouTube channel. But the second piece is the following one. I am sensitive to the idea that, government tyranny aside, is it really good if only the right-wing nuts have the guns? And that's why many of my liberal friends are now firearms owners. And as I've said before, I don't talk about my own ownership or lack thereof of firearms, but there are many people I know who say, I don't even really like guns, but I don't want only the right-wing nuts to have them. And it is sort of a race to the bottom. That's the sad thing about it. Next email is from Nathan. Nathan writes in about the Overton window and says, David, sir, are you familiar with the Overton window? This concept seems to be the reason why Pence has been characterized as saving democracy by simply doing his job, opposed to Trump's insanity. It's similar to the concept I've heard you describe before as hypernormalization. Adam Curtis rocks too. This concept is very hard to work into conversations with the Trump supporters in my life. Any tips to deal? Much love from a very red upstate New York area. Yeah, I've been spending more and more time in upstate New York. It is shockingly right wing. And, you know, when you look at New York as a state, it's very blue, but that it's extremely skewed by the city and a few other spots. But I've spent a lot of time lately, like in the Hudson area, and right in Hudson, it's quite blue. But everywhere around, I haven't looked at the maps, but it looks very deep red. You know, Joe Biden has dementia, lawn signs, and all sorts of different stuff. But yes, it is absolutely true that when the Republican Party has lost its mind, when Mike Pence says, I can't overturn the results, some people go, what a hero. What a pro-democracy hero he is. When Liz Cheney says, hey, Joe Biden really won and Trump incited the January 6th riot, we go, wow, what a heroic, reasonable Republican. Because in comparison, they seem that way. But these are not heroes. These are just some of the few somewhat attached to reality voices that remain in the Republican Party. Neil wrote in about my Alex Jones impression. And Neil says, David, since you asked, I don't really like your Alex Jones impression. Not because it isn't very good, but because as a person with a lisp, I cringe heavily when people fake lisp. To me, it seems your impression is just a heavy lisp, not a heavy smoker, as the caller mentioned. Anyway, love the show. Yeah, is that even a lisp? Like when Alex Jones says globalists, I don't think of that as a lisp. I think of a lisp as something else where, anyway, I'm not going to even mimic it now. We're not making fun of lisps. We're not doing any of it. That being said, there is this thing. I don't know if it's a lisp, but I don't know if you guys have noticed that Don Jr. and Ivanka, they seem to have fake teeth that are a little bit too big for them. And it makes them speak in a weird way. I don't think that's a lisp either. Maybe I just don't know enough about what counts as a lisp. But anyway, we're certainly not making fun of lisps here on the show. Thank you, Neil. Jillian wrote in about fuel prices. Jillian says, fuel prices have an impact on cost of living. That's undeniable. But it amazes me that Americans cannot see the whole picture. For a long time now, the low cost of fuel in the U.S. has been an enviable luxury as seen from other countries. Now prices have risen across the world. In fact, in Ghana, where I currently live, the price of a gallon of diesel has rocketed to $7.17 or $5.95 a gallon, depending on whether you use UK or USA gallons. This is in a country where many live well below the poverty line, and this price rise has extreme effects. I sympathize with all people who are suffering at the moment, not just those in one country. Yeah, so one of the things we have to acknowledge is it can both be true that paying $4.50 a gallon instead of $2.50 a gallon in the United States is a major impact on a lot of families. That's true. And also prices in the US for fuel are really low compared to the rest of the world for the most part, other than some extremely, oil producing rich nations. I think like in the Emirates, fuel is really cheap. But that's because fuel prices in the U.S. have not been accurate in terms of representing the true cost of fuel. Gasoline prices are subsidized in the U.S. and the production is subsidized. So what that means is there's a lot of the production is subsidized and the environmental impact is not accurately reflected by the prices that we pay. So we are not accurately charging the end user for gasoline and diesel. That's the truth in the United States. And when gas prices more accurately reflect their full cost, including on the environment, people drive much smaller fuel efficient vehicles. When I was in Spain about somewhere between a month and 10 years ago, I don't know, it's a blur. No, I think last summer. When I was in Spain last summer, 10 months ago, I rented a relatively fuel efficient vehicle. I don't even remember what it was. There's all these little vehicles that they have in Europe that we don't have here in the US, stick shift, little hatchback, and quite fuel efficient. And it was still really expensive to drive around because you have to convert euro to dollar and you have to convert liters to gallons and do a whole thing. I think it was roughly 7 something a gallon. And just doing a reasonable amount of driving still cost a bunch. The tolls are very high. Driving around is much more accurately priced in Europe and in other parts of the world. So 100% Jillian is correct. Gerson wrote in about David Beardman and says, hello, David, I am writing this to implore you to grow out your beard. I see limitless potential in your facial hair. Clean up the neckline, set your follicles free. I assure you, you will have elegant whiskers in no time. Use jojoba oil and a beard balm of your choice. To keep everything healthy and moisturized, a boar hair brush is also a worthwhile investment. Sincerely, a man with a similar beard. Yeah, what happened was when the baby came and then I had the unexpected time off and all these different things, I just didn't have time to shave. Last night I did a little cleanup and I cleaned up the neckline and everything. I am willing to get creative with the beard. That is not something I am afraid of. Let's see where it goes. Fletch wrote in and says, why not arm the military with baseball bats and knives? Sir, a common argument I'm coming across from the right is that knives and baseball bats can kill, yet we have no restrictions on those. So why have restrictions on guns? In that case, why not send the troops into battle only with knives and baseball bats. Surely if a bat is just as lethal as a high-powered rifle, then purchasing said rifles for the troops is a waste of taxpayer dollars. Of course, yeah, I mean, it's sort of tongue-in-cheek, but there's some sense to that. If it were true that knives and baseball bats and hammers and all these things are potentially just as deadly as guns, then why waste all the money on guns for the military and for police? Yes. Now, there are some pretty easy holes to poke in that, but it is a fair question to be asking regardless. Philip writes in and says, what's the controversy over the word expat? David, the following question is in regards to a response of yours about how to identify Ukraine on the YouTube video entitled Trump on his knees for Jesus. That's a great video. As an expat living in Thailand, I did not know there was a controversy surrounding the term expat. Could you explain it again? So here's the deal with the term expat. I have two answers to this. On the one hand, the reason the term expat has gotten controversial is that there's a sort of like racialized class element to it. And I'll explain it to you. When someone from Thailand comes to the United States, we rarely call them expats. We call them immigrants. And when an American goes to Thailand, we often don't say, I'm an immigrant. People say, I'm an expat. So I think you can understand how implicit in that there's potentially a class and a race element to it. But I also want to go further. Sometimes when the white dude, assuming Philip is an American white dude, when the white dude goes to Thailand, they're not going and finding work in the local economy. They're either going already as sort of semi-retired, or they're going and working a remote American job and earning US dollars while in Thailand. That's different than someone from Thailand who comes to the United States and has to find work. Let's call it like professional, like not a doctor that comes to the US to become a doctor from Thailand, but people in the service industry. And so on the one hand, there's this kind of race class thing where when the Americans go elsewhere, we call them expats. And when people from other countries come to the US, we call them immigrants. Sometimes there is a difference, which is you go and you're, a remote worker for a tech company in Thailand. And that's a little bit different because your relationship to the Thai economy is then something other than when someone comes to the US and works like in the service industry. So I think that there are differences between types of immigration, and that's the controversy that exists over the term expat. Here's a few bonuses. Jesse commented on YouTube, Dear David Pakman, you have never needed a gun and you have no right to speak about guns. Well, number one, saying I have no right to speak, that doesn't sound like you support free speech. I have no right to speak, but this is very dumb. This is like saying if you've not been in the military, you can't have an opinion about the Iraq War. We heard some right-wingers saying that during George W. Bush's Iraq War. That's silly. And also, you have never needed a gun. I have chosen not to talk about my personal relationship to guns on the show, including my ownership or lack of ownership of firearms. So I think it's neither here nor there, but you don't know anything about my relationship to guns. Okay, Jesse, thank you very much. Another YouTube comment, no cap, but I honestly thought Pakman was like 26 or 27 years old tops. Please share your skincare routine, David. Okay, here's my skincare routine. I use face lotion with SPF 15. I just use it, okay? So when I'm out there, I've got sunscreen. Summer, winter, spring, fall, I've got SPF. And then otherwise, that's really it. I use a vitamin C cleanser in the shower. Thank you very much. And lastly, from John. John says, people wake up. Mr. Pakman is our enemy. Mr. Pakman hates the common American. I wonder why he didn't talk about Biden's mental health. I've actually talked about it many times. Also, why did he not talk about Biden stopping the feds from dealing with the virus and making it the state's problem? What? Funny, wasn't that Biden's big campaign promise to end the virus? What the hell? Pakman, how much is Big Pharma and George Soros giving you to give us propaganda? Nothing. I bet you're, Y-O-U-R, a millionaire from them, not from the common American. You're, Y-O-U-R, a sellout. And people are beginning to see this. I couldn't possibly address that in the way in which it should substantively be addressed. So let me do a presented without comment. Thank you very much to everybody who wrote in. info@davidpakman.com. Bonus show coming up. Just me on today's bonus show. No Pat. Pat's gone, but you'll get me. For better or worse. Sign up at joinpakman.com. Otherwise, we'll see you after the July 4th holiday.